And we should be live. But we always have to wait for those few minutes to check. All right, we should be good to go. Let me go tweet out that we are live. And here we go. All right, well, happy Easter, everybody. I hope everyone has had a wonderful holiday so far. If you've had the chance to spend time with your families, I hope that you are. If you haven't yet, I hope that you spend the time to do so. Hello, Focron. Happy Easter to you as well. I'm happy to be here. I figured I'd spend a little time to stream with you all today and say hello after I got back from church. So happy Easter, everybody. We'll just wait a few minutes for everyone to show up. I don't expect too many people to be here today. After all, it is the holiday, and I hope that everyone is with their families. But like I had said the other day, I was hoping that we would just spend this time to have a little casual stream, celebrate the holiday, celebrate 1,000 subs, and just give you all a little bit of company for those who aren't with their family today. So yeah, it's been a fun week or so since the last time that we did one of these. I plan on making this stream a weekly sort of deal. That's the plan at the very least. And I'm looking forward to doing my best to, keep things regular, keep things within a schedule, especially now that I'm making a little bit of money from this. Nothing serious, but I'm very thankful for what people give me. And with that being said, I feel obligated to put out more work and to keep doing a harder job at it. So while I'm here, let me pull up this photo and sort of let everyone know what I've been up to over the last week. Let me check my notifications real quick. Thanks, Twitter. So yeah, it's been a very good week. I've been incredibly happy with how well things have turned out in terms of just my IRL stuff. So let me go share this with you all. So share screen, tab. I'm pretty sure it's this one. Yep, there it is. So yeah, I know this is a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe a little bit grotesque, maybe a little bit grody. But so I got this taken out of me on Monday. I was really happy about that. This has been in me now since last end of June, beginning of July. And this is what they used for hemodialysis until things got settled at home with my at-home treatment. But what scared the crap out of me was the process for taking it out. I was like, well, are you guys going to put me under like you did putting it in? And they're like, oh, no, this is a little more old-fashioned. So here I am on this like Monday afternoon. They called me while I was at work, and I was like, see ya. I left the office, drove to the hospital, and I'm sitting here in this really like corner gaudy radiology like waiting room bed. And they're like, okay, Prudentialist, we're gonna lay you down here, and we're just gonna pull it out of you. We're just gonna yank it out. So that was my Monday afternoon, and they were like, okay, you're gonna just tilt your head to the left here. You're gonna feel some pressure, and yeah, it'll be out in a jiff. They must yank, don't they? Yeah, they had to until they yanked, and then they realized that, oh, it's in there real good, and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna shoot you up full of lidocaine, and that's what they did. And then so there's this guy just sitting. I almost want to say he's like standing on top of me, almost got his like leg on the bed, and I'm of course joking. But here I am, just with my head cocked. I'm not supposed to see what's going on, and here he is, just yanking this thing out of me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is where I'm going to die in this like poorly lit radiology room in the hospital where they found some dude's hat who was here the like day before. Good times. But no, I'm really glad that it's out because I could take a shower like a normal person. And yeah, I mean that thing was in me for like 9 months, Minoan, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's tissue attached. But I didn't even know how it was attached myself until I tweeted about it at the beginning of the week, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, this thing goes like straight into your heart." And yeah, I didn't need to know that, and I had this thing in me for 9 months, so woo. Um, but yeah, so that was the start of my week, and then the week only got better. And I'll take this image off because I don't think everyone wants to see that, and that's fine. I'll put on something a little more fitting for the holiday. Share. There we go. We'll share this. But yeah, that was the start of my week. And then later on, we had managed to. I got a second interview with this religious freedom organization that I applied for back in like January. So this was even before I had left my other job, before they had not renewed my contract due to COVID. And, I interviewed with them, and then the woman who interviewed with me had a family emergency and quit. So they put like a hiring freeze. And then out of the blue last week, they were just like, hey, like we still have your resume on file. I said, are you still interested? And I was like, yes, because this is the kind of work I'm interested in. Plus it would be actual like activist work, working with an organization that does things for the right. So for me, like mentally, I'm like, this is definitely where I want to go. It combines my skill set with things that I actually want to do. So they interviewed me, and I had the second interview on Tuesday, and it went really well. And if I don't hear back from them by the end of this upcoming week, which is what they said I would hear back from, I would be a little bit disappointed, just simply because like I interview incredibly well with jobs. I know how to sell things. I know how to talk to people. I know how to present myself in the best way possible. So if I don't get it, I'm going to be a little disappointed because I would really want that job. The pay is pretty good for a nonprofit, and the work I'd be doing is right up my alley with talking to people and donor relations. But I mean, it's for an organization that I would like to be a part of. Like I had mentioned earlier, they're like, we would deal with a lot of religious and right wing groups. Is that okay with you? And I'm like, yes, please. So that's it's been a good week. Not to mention, of course, it's Easter Sunday. I spent time at church. I went to my grandparents' church service with them, and things have been great. It's been a good week, and I hope it's been a good week for you all as well. So I thought that we would just spend the time to talk, hang out, and of course celebrate one of the other things besides the resurrection of our Savior. Of course, we did reach 1,000 subs this week. We are at 1,055, and partially due to engaging in YouTube e-drama and Twitter drama, but it was worth it. The video that we made was talking about James Lindsay, and I think that we might talk about that a little bit later today when I mention the video. But yes, American Populist, it does sound based. It was they do a lot of work right now on the West Coast, and they've been doing a lot of lawsuits right now in regards to COVID lockdowns in churches and synagogues. So they do a lot of good work. I'm really excited. I hope I get a chance to work for them. Ouchie says, I've come back from dinner with my family and loaded up on GME confirmation bias. Life is good. I'm glad that life's doing well for you, Ouchie. I'm glad. I don't know how much I would say that you want to load up on GME confirmation bias, just simply because anytime that GME gets even the slightest fluctuation, they start shutting down trading and how much you can trade in volume, and I think that's bullshit. Minowin says, I heard Don the Pleb got into it and I missed it all. You can watch it. Don did a whole stream, I think, on like Trovo or Trovo.live or whatever it's called, sort of going through the Distributists comment section. It's up there for your viewing pleasure. I'd rather not get into it. I watched the whole thing, and Don did a very good job sort of breaking down, I think, some of the things that were said there in the comments. But yeah, it was, no words. But yeah, you can check it out. It's on Don's Twitter feed and Don's other live stream backups. There's some clips of it there if you want to go through it. I have no desire to review drama anymore. I don't want to do it, despite the fact that reviewing drama is what got me over 1,000 subs to begin with. But it's not something that I want to do for any length of time or discuss drama. Oh, it's all deleted per auto poll. I haven't checked. I watched some of it yesterday because I know Charlemagne made some comments on it. I'll find it and I'll link it in the chat if I can. But yeah, people have disagreements. I think that the whole point, though, is not to have those disagreements out publicly. There's a time and a place to do it, and I think positioning yourself to make it, your dirty laundry out and aired for everybody. I mean, I don't think that that's good optics, especially, I think, because there are quite a few people now who do commentary stuff that also do a lot of IRL on the ground sort of activism. And I don't think that it's necessary for us to look disunited or disjointed, which, I mean, of course, we are disunited and disjointed, right? Like, the right is inherently so disparate in its ideological goals. Like, you have like fusionism, you have libertarians, you have paleocons, you have Christians, you've got the neo-reactionaries, you have monarchists, you have ANCAPs, like anything that, like, as Don has said, to the right of Mao, it makes it very hard for us to sit down and sort of come together and discuss the issues. But yeah, like I have no desire to really get into that stuff. I think that it's important that at the very least, on maybe even prima facie, that there's some sort of unified front. I think that a lot of the disagreements that we have kind of needs to come after the bigger issues get taken care of. Which, of course, the main problem right now is woke techno capital, and that's one of our largest problems. But I have no hope. Manoan says, I have no hope for unification in today's climate. It will take a traumatic event or a very charismatic leader. It will probably take both. However, I'm not going to be the person. Will I be the person to do that? Most likely not. I hope whatever traumatic event that happens, I hope we can nip it in the bud before it gets too serious, before things get really bad. Ouchie says, a lot of rules have changed since the last price hike, and people have had over 2 months to study hedge fund shorting GME. Well, that's true. Never underestimate the weaponized autism of the internet. If 4chan of the early to mid 2000s has been any indication, you just don't fuck with it. I don't even consider libertarians right wing anymore. A good chunk of them I don't. I've definitely evolved on that issue. And this is coming from someone who used to be definitely used to be your very normie con, like libertarianism is the way for the GOP to go in the future. And then a lot of that started changing when I moved to the rural, small town country life that I live now about a year and a half ago, to where I'm like, nope, community, traditionalism, all these like traditional right-wing values are the way to go. And the more and more I keep looking at life, the more I keep thinking, all those like evangelical Christians that were warning us about social issues 25 to 30 years ago to 40 years ago should be, we owe them a huge apology. So I've definitely evolved on that issue. Not all of them are bad. I just don't like the fact that mainstream fusionists or libertarians feel so obligated to have the boot of, the jackboot of the corporation rather than the jackboot of the state on their neck. As long as the snake is trampled on and treaded on by a private company, they don't seem to mind. Let's see here. We can all seemingly agree children shouldn't be abused. That it's possibly something we can unify behind. Maybe the last thing. Yeah, but I mean, even then, you have the so I mean, there are some that would definitely disagree with that, which is unfortunate, or at least maybe more libertarian leaning or libertarian in name only, which is why I'm beginning to think they're not right wing anymore. Focron says Moldbug's characterization of the right is Coriolanus and fault. Yeah, I read that essay of his on Grey Mirror, and I liked a lot of what he had to say. I think his point that he makes about how whatever revolution or whatever sort of political movement is going to be channeled in today is going to have to be low energy. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, not to take the Baptist, route of things, but it's like there's no one today, right, that can be like Napoleon or Tamerlane and work within all these different forms of government and people and then unify and lead revolution. The other thing, though, is I think that a lot of those comparisons don't work because the apparatus of how the nation state operates today didn't exist during the times of those great men. Like nuclear weapons didn't exist, 100 years ago or even 150 years. So if any sort of violent action or kinetic action were to take place, the worst case scenario that the West thought of when the Soviet Union fell and all those nuclear weapons were all over the place, that would happen here. And you bet your ass that would lead to foreign intervention. And that's my concern. Which is why whatever Moldbug, I think, is right when he talks about whatever is going to take place to change the regime, for better or for worse, it's going to have to be channeling the low energy, ritualistic aspects of how we engage in politics today. And I was talking about that yesterday on the Real Talk, is just that the things that we have are ritualistic. They're very, our formalism is almost religious, which is kind of strange to think about it, considering you have a separation of church and state, but of course there's always a new type of religion and social aspects of, conditioning and engineering people. But that's where we're at. So I definitely agree that his characterization of that essay is right. Day of the Mongoose on Twitter right now is what MW says. I wonder what you mean by that. Is that somebody's profile? Am I just missing out on something there? But yeah, I agree, Matt, that it has to be non-kinetic. Mongoose eats snake. Gotcha. Michael says, Happy Easter, folks. Today was the first time I actually acted like an atheist on a religious holiday, and it sucked. Back to church I go. Did you not go to church today? Is that what you're saying? Tweety Bird says, technocracy, business/government joining to defeat us is libertarianism, not dead. Oh, I mean, so it depends on how you want to look at it, right? Do you want to look at it in a traditional framework of liberalism, or do you want to look at it in, just the abstraction? Because to me, it's definitely dead, because what's the point of pursuing economic mobility and the freedom of the people when the very aspect of having a limited state just transfers all power to non-state actors like corporations, and then your arm is tied behind your back by your arm is tied behind your back because your whole aspect is promoting economic mobility and economic productivity amongst the people. So you get your arm twisted because it's the jackboot of the corporation, not the jackboot of the state. I like the idea of promoting economic productivity and social mobility through the marketplace. I think that's a great idea, but I think Academic Agent, John Dee, and several others have said that a lot of this doesn't matter unless you have a strong moral system behind it. Unless the economics, that you have is backed by a moral code or a moral direction or framework, then what good is it for? And at that point, it just becomes a race to the bottom for profits, which is largely in part what we've seen out of neoliberalism, at least economically, which is all why I'm for having a strong moral society that can have, somewhat of the libertarian framework on the economy. But without the moral framework and without a solid, fiber for being and character, it serves little to no good. Oh, Michael, I didn't know that you were an atheist, but yes, you should go back to church. But we'll see you later. I'm glad that you could stop by for a little bit. Cannot find the drama video to Dave get owned or the other guy. So I will be honest, I haven't seen Dave's comments yet on the stream, nor do I wish to. I mean, I probably will just so I can understand and maybe provide commentary or context. But I know that Academic Agent and Don the Pleb had a stream about the future of the right. Dave had some comments on it. And then Don did a stream responding to the comment section of Dave's video, and I don't think that it's been saved or it hasn't been allowed to be clipped yet per J. Autobol and Don. But like I said, drama is not something that I want to be involved in. I think that if two people have a disagreement, they can, do the classic YouTube response video. But I think the more mature and productive thing, of course, is to just have a straight conversation face to face on the issue, or via chat or in the comments or email or whatever. So that's just my personal opinion. Minowan says the only freedoms we have right now is the freedom to be debased morally. Everything else is regulated, controlled, and taxed by the government. Essentially, you ever notice that the only things that are truly laissez-faire are just your vices? The pornography industry comes to mind, and they did that whole profile, I think, on the guy that created the OnlyFans thing and how he's worth like $1 billion. Funny how that works out. Ouchie says, people on RGME won't even flinch until price per share reaches millions. They're hitting Q levels of zealotry. Yee. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, if you want to, I appreciate the determination to stick it to the hedge funds and to go back on, game the system and actually make these people bleed. I'm all for it because, let's face it, the system is inevitably rigged against us, working people and people who are retail investors. But I mean, how much damage are you going to do to yourself and your own income and your own savings? Because some of those, that's the problem with zealotry, right? And especially with, like, if you're going to make a comparison of the GME people to Q, just don't hurt yourself is all I'm going to say. Star Cavalier says, taking a course on entrepreneurial liability. The more I learn, the more I think there is no reason to start a business. It's at a point where you could be sued for dropping a pen almost. The course also advertises managerialism. Well, I wonder why. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with torts and liability, not to mention premises liability for business owners. At this point, if you don't have the means to run your business without an actual storefront, then yes, there's a lot of actual liability reason for you to be concerned about. Jayan says, the Christian take on freedom is that true freedom comes from submitting to God, and any other so-called freedom is just enslaving yourself to the enemy. Yes, and a lot of people take issue with that. And a lot of people take issue with the fact that the Abrahamic religions, both, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, all take a similar issue that you have to respect the hierarchy of the Almighty Father. And that kind of gets lost, especially in today's modern day and age. And I was reading not too long ago, Peter Thiel's, I think it's his 2008 essay, The Straussian Moment, where he's sort of criticizing the Enlightenment by trying to secularize the religious, aspects of morality and hierarchy and submitting to God by implementing these neutral, liberal institutions, but in turn you devoid yourself of the actual moral framework, and in doing so you lose your track as a people, which leads, of course, to the decline, debasement, and a lot of the issues that we see today. And we think that that's so, enlightened, that we think that that's so advanced, when in fact it's really just a really large bit of regression, because we've taken out the things that have made society and civilization what they are. It's a really good essay. I do have a video in the works on it. But yeah, a lot of things have happened this week, both, in the news, with the channel and all that. I've been also working on a couple of essays. I think I mentioned last week that I'm going to be submitting an essay to the Antelope Hill Publishing essay contest that they have. I'm looking forward to that. It's due at the end of the month. And I will be submitting an essay based around their theme called Why We Fight. And I'm going to just try my best to be outlining the importance of localism, on the ground stuff, talking with people, and having a good conversation, hopefully in this essay, about ways that we can create anti-fragile networks in real life. Hello, Kyle Green. It's nice to see you. I'm glad that you could stop by. I'm hoping one of these days I can get Conscious Caracol on here one of these days to talk about some books. That's where I met you, Kyle, and all the lovely people from South Africa. It was a wonderful time. Matthew Daniels says, you have to be in a more advantageous position every day when working for yourself. Otherwise, you'll hit the ground. You'll hit the ground hard. A short cautionary tale. Don't burn out. That is true. And I try my best not to burn out with this stuff, although I've had a hard time balancing when I tell myself that I have a deadline for X, Y, and Z, and then things in real life pop up like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment, or I have to plug in and get my dialysis treatment at night. So like I have to like really be like very scheduled with my time and leisure and everything like that. Which thankfully, because like I do like the real talk videos, like some of my leisure can also be for like the YouTube channel, because I'm like, oh, I can record while I'm out fishing and relaxing. But yeah, I definitely try my best not to burn out. I just definitely need to be very important about just how I schedule things. Happy Easter, Jonathan Gordon. Christ is risen, and everyone should be happy that we can celebrate the resurrection of our Lord and Savior on this fine Sunday afternoon. What's going on in Ukraine, says MW, and Ouchie says it best, proxy conflict. There was a declaration done by President Zelensky sort of talking about resecuring the pretty much the peninsula and the Donbass region, which had been owned by the Russians pretty much since 2015. And it has been just insane. This is the escalation that's going to happen. And as many other critics and commentators have pointed out, there's no win condition for the Ukrainians. You were trying to seize back a territory owned by one of the most powerful militaries on the continent. Not to mention that there's a significant population that ethnically identifies with the Russians. And of course, the Crimean Peninsula gives access to the Russians a warm water port that leads, of course, into the rest of the European area through how it connects to the rest of the waterways in that part of the continent. Like, there's no way that there's an achievable win condition for the Ukraine that either A, doesn't involve more, European and potentially American powers getting involved, not to mention that we've been selling the Ukrainians arms for years now. But it does not help that how it's going is leading to more sanctions, and we have only like the weakest, State Department and foreign policy out of this current administration. So, but of course, there's that hubris, I think, that comes out of the establishment class that I would fear means that we're going to get involved in more ways than I think the average American would like. And that has a lot to do with the hubris of the existing political class, thinking that we still have, that it's still 1999 and that we're the like dominant power, and that Russia and China haven't been working their ass off to match us technologically. Like, it's going to be a problem. Zelensky's rise to power is the best argument for the world being a simulation, being set up for maximum fun and for the observer. That, and whoever that Dr. Coomer guy was, is a health official. And those are some really good arguments for the world being a simulation. But Zelensky is the greatest argument that true populism, not even populism, what's the word I'm looking for? I almost want to say that you can fail upwards. Zelensky played a president on a TV show in the Ukraine. I think it's called For the People. It's on Netflix. You can watch it. It's like one or two seasons. The whole premise is that Zelensky goes on like some viral rant against the government, and then everyone in Ukraine writes him in as president, and he plays the president. It's almost as if Ronald Reagan played the president in the 1950s, and then, of course, becomes president in the 80s. That's where we're at. So yeah, Zelensky's just an interesting character all on himself. Kyle says, have you heard of the takeover of a small part of Mozambique by Islamic rebels? It's absolutely horrible. So many folks are dying for nothing. No, I have not heard about what's been going on in Mozambique. But now that you mentioned that, I'm going to go take a look at that right now. Let's go type. Let's see what's been going on. Let's see here. More than 2,500 people have been killed and 700,000 ran from their homes since an Islamist insurgency by militants linked to the IS's group started in Mozambique, operating in 2017. And this report, Save the Children, said it had spoken to displaced families who reported the gruesome act that has been meted out and against their kids. Good Lord. Released its own news agency. So where have they been? Okay, I'm just going to pull up this article from CBS News. We'll read it together. How does that sound? We will go read this article together. Share. 2,500, please. It's insane. Good Lord. Okay, so let's go share this. ISIS-linked militants seize Mozambique town, forcing thousands to flee, including workers on a major gas project. This was updated just a few days ago. In Pemba, Mozambique, thousands of survivors of a coordinated jihadist attacks in northern Mozambique's Palma town are arriving on boats in the provincial capital of Pemba on Monday, according to sources in the city. International aid sources says between 6,000 and 10,000 people were waiting to be evacuated to safety following the raid on Palma that began last Wednesday. Extremist militants raided Palma, a town of around 75,000 people with strategic value in the province of Cabo Delgado. The town is the home of multi-billion-dollar gas project that is being built by France's Total and other energy companies. This explains the Economist article the other day, and I was talking about this, where it was saying that France was gearing up for a more intensive military conflict. You can argue that maybe it's for Russia, but it's always been, I think, to me, more about Africa and its projects there. Of all the Western powers, the United States included, France is probably, I would say, third in line for terms of the most territorial and military interests in the region. You have China, which of course the largest foreign direct investment in the area. Then the United States do our AFRICOM and anti-terror and aid projects, and then of course France. But yeah, I cannot believe it. This is insane. The government says dozens were killed in the attack, including 7 people caught in an ambush during an operation to evacuate them where they sought refuge. Good Lord. Trying to evacuate people. Good Lord. Although a lot of them are already employed there by the French. A CBS News correspondent reported this month the U.S. has boosted its support for Mozambique as the country faces a bloody ISIS-linked Islamist insurgency in Cabo Delgado. ISIS claimed responsibility on Monday for the brazen attack on Palma, saying its forces were now in control of the town. ISIS said in a statement that released by its own Amaq news agency, citing a security source, as it often does, that Islamic State militants have launched a major attack on the economic city of Palma near the Tanzanian border last Wednesday, engaging Mozambican security forces, leading to the killing of 55 Mozambican troops, Christians, and including some foreign contractors. The attack was the closest yet to another major gas project since the insurgency broke out in October of 2017. The siege forced expatriate workers and locals to seek refuge in a temporarily heavily guarded gas plant located on the Afungi Peninsula, 6 miles from Palma on the Indian Ocean, south of the Tanzanian border. Easy stuff. France does have a major influence in Africa. DC says, it was basically a Dunkirk moment on a coastal town. All sort of civilian vessels are trying to evacuate the city. Fokron says 300 jihadis with AKs beat the Ukrainian and South African mercenaries who had attack choppers. Yeah, I never underestimate what can be accomplished by a bunch of jihadis with AKs against advanced military mercenaries and military equipment. It's insane. We are here and wondering in South Africa when we will be next. Well, I hope it doesn't spill over. I would imagine you're going to see a lot more involvement from the French and American militaries, and because of that, France is determined to continue to LARP as a world power by making the West Africa their geopolitical focus. And I mean, why not? France has in large part wanted to return back to its times as a colonial power. It does not help that the United States essentially forced them out. I think Robert Kennedy had a speech about Algeria to the French back in the late 50s, early 60s. So, but I mean, it's truly insane that they're taking advantage of a major of the current pandemic. No other country is giving light on these situations. Funny that they ignore these very real threats. Well, I'm not surprised. Most people are the tensions between the larger state powers is insane right now, especially as the pandemic has been making the fault lines between sort of the West and the Chinese all the more prevalent, especially on the issues of trade and manufacturing. I'm not surprised that this is being ignored, especially because things at home are a little rougher than usual. These things tend to happen during pandemics, global recessions, times when nations aren't willing to exert international power because that requires more spending, which is usually met by either tax increases or austerity, which of course no one wants a repeat of the early 2010s. Kyle says, thank you for taking the time mentioning it. I feel sorry for all my black brothers and sisters up there. Yeah, I can't believe that that's what's going on. And I'm further surprised that it hasn't received as much attention by either the US State Department or other actors involved in the West. That is correct. USA did ruin European dominance. Well, of course. Why would we want to have challengers to our newfound, hegemony and supremacy at the end of World War II? I mean, we were already rebuilding Europe through the Marshall Project. What a better way to prevent them from having colonial power or exert foreign influence than by eliminating colonialism altogether? The United States is a big proponent of anti-colonialist efforts, especially in the 1960s and 70s. A lot, as people will point out, a lot of the actions of the CIA and the State Department have been incredibly leftist in terms of, political philosophy, anti-colonialism, anti-racism, getting Europe out of, Africa and East Asia. Portugal to re-annex Mozambique. Portugal hasn't been a major global power since, 400 years now? And that's never going to happen. Pre-apartheid South Africa was a bulwark against this type of thing. Yes, and then the United States put a lot of pressure on South Africa, and we could do a whole stream one of these days. I might do that. I might invite some South Africans out here, and we might talk about Rhodesia. There's a whole lot that the United States is partially, if not fully, responsible for when it comes to the issues in South Africa. Ouchie says, as clubs are very under legal lockdown, people are setting up parties in ruined buildings. They cost 2 to 3 times more for entry, and you're driven on a bus with 9 other people while blindfolded. Who's doing this? Oh my goodness. Everything is like a regular club, and the organizers don't pay taxes, of course. Very interesting. Is this happening? Where's this happening? Is this happening in like California, the UK? I'm interested. Congratulations on the 1,000 subs, says Henry. Love your channel. Thank you so much, Henry. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Ouchie says the polls. Huh. Well, that would be... I'm not really... you figure with Poland's more right-wing government that things wouldn't be under a strict lockdown. Kyle says, it seems like every major unexpected victory was won because of sneaky opportunists that took it and got away for it. Well... As an American, I can tell you that we've been doing that since the very beginning of our country, from Trenton to present day. Every major victory that are unexpected are usually because you can get away with it. You're seizing the opportunity. Focron says, Rhodesian and South African bush wars are a very incredibly interesting history. I think I would like to do a stream talking about Rhodesia and the bush wars. I think that it would be fun to talk about. Plus, I would like to learn more. I agree, Tiger USA. The history of Rhodesia should be taught more. You can get in through secret Facebook groups, and you can be invited by somebody who's already in. Huh. Well, nice to know that speakeasies are still in play over in Poland. Yeah, all the Polish anti-COVID laws are more or less illegal. I've told you about it before. Yeah, you have. I have to remember that I've got everybody. It's a very international community here, and it's fun getting to hear from South Africans, from Polish, from Brits, from Hungarians and Americans. I'm very happy to have a diverse crowd in a way where I get to hear different perspectives, not just the American definition of diversity. All those parties sound kind of awesome. Not that I'd go. I would kind of want to go just for the experience. It's the closest thing I think that we'll ever get to the 1920s speakeasies here in America during Prohibition. So, I mean, I would definitely want to do it just for the experience. It sounds like a good time. So, for in other news, I believe, what's today? Today is the 4th. I believe on the 7th, I will be on AM stream, and we'll be talking about Mittenrich and Mittenrich foreign policy. And then on the 10th, which is this Saturday, I'm going to have Apex Synapse of Apex Notes' Substack on, and we're going to do things like the Hoover Institution's Uncommon Knowledge series. So if you want to find the piece that we're going to be looking up, I would suggest finding Apex Notes' Substack and reading his piece on how the left are hyper-capitalists. And we'll be talking about that, and that'll give us a good conversation about woke capital, today's events, liberalism, and whatnot. And it'll be a fun conversation because Apex is not a right-winger. Apex definitely is post-liberal, but definitely leans to the left. So it'll be a good time, and that'll be on Saturday the 10th. I'll be talking with Apostolistic Majesty on this Wednesday, the 7th, about Mittenreich. And then on the 1st of May, we will be doing Prudent Reads number 4, which is going to be the first volume of Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West. And I am excited to announce that Aaron McIntyre will be our guest for Prudent Reads number 4. Aaron's done a lot of great work. Aaron has definitely been doing a lot of good NRX and reactionary content and stepping up since others have been on hiatus. And I'm looking forward to talking about Decline of the West Volume 1 with all of you all on the 1st. If anyone else has read the book and is interested in coming on, feel free to DM me and we can do that. And no one can pronounce AM's name. No, I can't, which is partially why I think he changed his name on his Twitter handle. I can't say that word to save my life. And this is coming from somebody who knows how to talk to people and has good public speaking skills. And I can't say that word to save my life, which is proof that I probably should never go into the clergy because I'd be saying that word a lot and we'd be screwed. Kyle says, congratulations on the 1K, and here's to 99K more subs. Your videos need to get out there, and people need to start thinking critically more. Yes. Well, thank you, Kyle. I greatly appreciate it. I am glad that we got here in only 5 months. I'm surprised. I'm very glad that I can put out stuff that people enjoy, and I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, I'm trying to learn how to use things like Sony Vegas Pro because I'll be honest, all of the videos I have made from now and the very beginning back in October in 2020 have all been done with your basic bitch Microsoft like video editor stuff that comes with every like Windows 10 computer. And to me, it's easy. I'm not a very tech literate person, so it's just like, like if I can make it work, we'll make it work. And I'm trying to learn how to use like the real tools now. That way I can make something of decent video quality. And if all else fails, I'm just going to find an editor on like Fiverr or something and just pay them money. Because I would like to put out higher quality content. Catholics say it in every mass, the Apostles' Creed. I know, and I'm sure the Catholics can. Good for all of the Catholics out there that can do it. I myself this Sunday morning went to a Baptist service. I went to my grandparents' church. I spent some time with them this Sunday morning, and I enjoyed a good Easter sunrise service, and it was very nice. Apostolic. There you go. Now I can pronounce it. Feeling like a goddamn child. Yeah, so the market is there to take full advantage of logical people out. Yeah, so the market is there to take full advantage of the logical people out there who need these types of platforms. Well, I would hope that I can provide things that help people think and at the same time encourage people to do things in their real world and their real neighborhoods, with their neighbors and with their families. Because there's only so much that we can do when we talk about, things online, and we talk about, I love this community. Don't get me wrong. Like between going to work every day and then having a few hours of my day before I have to like plug into my dialysis machine at night, the fact that I can put this stuff out here, do live streams on the weekends, respond to the comment section of YouTube videos. I like that we've created this little community. There's 1,000 of us. I'm very happy with it. And it's nice, but at the same time, there's only so much that online stuff can do, in order to, affect change in the real world. So I do my best to be involved in local politics here. I make sure that I'm aware of what my city council is doing, all of those sort of things. And I think it's all the more important that even though I can make you think and give you a different perspective and make you think about the world and foreign policy, international relations, political theory, all that stuff, I'm always going to stress or try and point you in the direction that we must become paragons of virtue. We must find ways to interact and create communities, not just on the internet, but in the real world with your neighbors, with people who think like-minded ways in your neighborhood, speaking out at city council meetings, doing the things that don't take much of anything but your time. I'm very much with Don the Pleb on there. If I can get 10% of your time to be focused on IRL in the real world, doing things that matter, then to me, that's a success. And Kyle is right. If you would like to like the stream and share it around, it does spread these things and it does help with the algorithm. I don't like to shill all that much, but Kyle does have an excellent point. Liking and sharing is always greatly appreciated just for the pure purposes of the algorithm. We've already got the gravy train rolling. We're over 1,000 subs. The growth is anywhere but up from here. So let's keep it going. Hi, Mark. I'm glad to see that you're on here. It is the stream. Happy Easter to everybody. I'm glad that you're all here. And yes, we made it to 1,000 subscribers earlier this week, and all we had to do was shit on James Lindsay. That was the nice part. Well, Kyle, if you want a wrench, I can definitely give you one. That's not a big deal. I only have a few. It's not that bad. We can do that right now. But yeah, I mean, life is, let's see here. There we go. Problem solved. Channel growth starts slowly, but increasingly will grow similar to AA's. Yeah, I think I was following Academic Agent when he was around maybe 10 to 1,000 subs, if not less. I think, yeah, definitely less than 20,000. And he's grown quite well. He's well over 50. So yeah, I'm very happy with it. And like I said, I don't want to make this a career. I don't want to make this a thing where I'm chasing money or chasing, donations or e-begging or, sponsored ads. I do this because I like it. Like I grew up doing speech and debate in high school and college, and I was always the person when we go out to dinner with a group of friends where people would ask me my opinion or what my take on something was. So I always enjoyed doing it. And to me, the more and more I, watched other people give their commentary and their thoughtful opinions on things, I'm like, well, hell, I could do it. And here we are. So I'm glad that all of you here think that the things I have to say are somewhat worthwhile. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, as I've said. I am incredibly happy with the trajectory that we're going. And so I'm very happy for it. Focron says, I'm starting to dislike the IDW more than I dislike the rabid leftists. I dislike them both equally for different reasons. I dislike leftists because they're rabid leftists and they're entropic and they're most of the things that are wrong with our current state of decay. The IDW's issue that I have with is that you have this wide variety of people that say that they don't like the woke, but they want the Overton window to pretty much be everything that's considered the center non-woke and then the leftists. They want to exist in a world where things are incredibly drawn further and further and further to the left while they claim to be representing the center. And as I mentioned in the modern day Yarndists video, like that's basically what Nick Land was talking about in the channel, the Cracker Factory, the chapter of the Dark Enlightenment, where essentially because the left thrives off dialectics, the right doesn't. The center moves to the left and the right moves to the center, which means things progressively move slowly in one direction. Cthulhu continues to swim in the direction that it needs to go to. And my issue with the IDW, whether, it's Caitlin Johnson, James Lindsay, Brett Weinstein, is that they want to go back to this era where there's true liberalism, quote unquote, where their positions of power, these academics, these high and mighty, supposedly neutral people that gets to talk about the occasional spicy things, like Brett Weinstein's an evolutionary psychologist, where their positions of power are the ones that are respected and held up on high regard. But now you have all these like white academics and white new atheists and white like media personalities that are upset that they're being kicked off their throne by supporting a framework of egalitarianism that is now being focused on the racial lens rather than the true neutral thing that they believe in. That's where we're at, and that's the problem where we are here, and that's the real that's what bothers me. And so I just like them both equally. And there was a good thread when Alex posted the video and saying, this is from a dissident right perspective, but it's a good summary of the drama. And I was like, dissident right? Is that what I would call myself these days? And I guess so. I mean, I don't consider myself a traditional conservative. I don't consider myself full NRX, but I mean, I guess dissident right's as good as title as any. I think I was talking with Focron the other day where I was just like, white-pilled NRX is probably the best way to describe me. But yeah. Star Cavalier says, we should look up the requirements to form our own towns. My state requires 100 people, 25 which are voters, plus the miscellaneous bits to run a town. I know that there have been movements for, I think, the Free Cities movement and things like that to get started. The question becomes the money, and then the question becomes finding the necessary people that can run the actual logistics behind it. So we're talking about like water, we're talking about engineering, water treatment, sewage, trash, all these things. Those, you would have to recruit those people. So one, you'd have to find the people that agree with you ideologically, that are willing to get up and move and actually do the work to pretty much be starting from scratch. And then two, the capital. And then three, the skill set. So, I mean, I know that Don jokes about pleb branch, but I mean, you would need to find the people with the know-how. Mark says, I suppose the right is mostly people that are tentatively, well, he says allied, I guess, quote, with each other rather than all subscribing to the same ideology. Essentially, the right is incredibly disparate in its various forms of ideology. I mean, like I had said earlier, you've got monarchists, you have ANCAPs, you have minarchists, you have tradcaths, you have neo-reactionaries, you've got monarchists, you've got a wide crowd. And I mean, you have your 1776 raw American Revolution types, federalists. We're all different, and which makes it very hard for us to unify. And as Nick Land has pointed out, and I'll refer back to the Dark Enlightenment, the right doesn't do well with dialectics, these convening contradictions, whereas the left does. I mean, this is why the right can't ever just be like, hey, look at these contradictions, look at these hypocrisies. It's like the left doesn't care. And I think that comes a lot to do with the fact that there's that essence of moral relativism that comes out of the left, which then, of course, seeps into everything else. So now you have a relativism that's just like, well, it doesn't matter that we think that gender is performative, but at the same time, we have to recognize it, but at the same time, we can't recognize it. And the same thing with race. Like, we shouldn't talk about race, but we must recognize our racial differences, even though recognizing it can make you a racist. And that's how it is. So we're all different, but we're all tentatively allied with each other because we've recognized that we have an enemy. And the enemy is the left woke techno capital that has eradicated pretty much all vestiges of traditional Republican form of government in the United States and by extension other parts of the West. Thank you, Mr. Patriarch. I'm very glad that we made it to the 1,000 sub club as well, and is well deserved. Well, thank you. It's well deserved for virtually all the other people that I have met as well. You included, Mr. Patriarch. Your video that I had found you on talking about how, you mentioned the apostles and how it only took 12 men to change the world after the death of Christ and his resurrection. To me, that's been very impactful for me, especially as I've been coming back to Christianity, that, you know what, it took 12 men to change the world for the better. And even though we're in these troubling times, I think it can take a few of us to, we can do the same. Not to the same degree, but I mean, if we can make the world even a little bit better for, say, our grandchildren, then I think that we've accomplished a lot in our lifetime. Shrouded Hill says there are three main LARPs: religious, nationalists, and techno-capitalists. According to Spantrel, the religious are the most insufferable. Is this his most recent essay, or I haven't kept up with Spangler. The last thing I read from him was the base draft, which was I really enjoyed, and I think that I might do a commentary on it just because I have a lot of thoughts about the base draft and the idea of recruiting people on there. A Dutch C says, do you remember many historical dates and names easily after reading it, or do you study on it? I usually have a pretty good memory, almost autistically to a degree, where if I read something, I will remember it for a very lengthy period of time. When I was a kid, I definitely enjoyed like those Uncle John bathroom readers full of trivia, so like dates and random factoids and things like that. Like I can tell you off the top of my head, like a giraffe has the same number of bones in its neck as a human does. They're just a lot longer. So I don't have to study up on it as much, although if it's something that I haven't read in forever ago, like the Mittenrich and Henry Kissinger's essay on Mittenrich, I think in like his Daedalus collection, like that'll have to reread and study up on. But most of the time I have a pretty good memory, and I hope I get to keep on to that as I get older. But let's see here. Kyle says, what are your thoughts on the sister of Harris getting into hot water for that racist tweets that was just theoretically getting swept under the rug? I mean, there's a lot of people that were like that were making rather racist and spicy tweets over recent shootings and criminal events like the thing at the Capitol, and we were already so quick to blame Whitey. And then, it turns out it wasn't a white guy, and here we are. I'm not surprised. Harris is married to a white guy. Harris has a lot of white family members, and they're all self-loathing white people. If you're on the left and you're white, you have to be self-loathing. I have yet to meet a white positive white liberal or white lefty and hold a positive opinion of their own race. So Kyle, that's my answer there, is that I'm not surprised. It's going to get swept under the rug, just like Amy Sisknit and all those other people that were blaming whites for the recent upticks in crime and trying to keep the progressive racial coalition together, despite the fact that blacks are beating up Asians en masse. And we've known it for like 12 years, that's sort of an open secret in like the cities, but no one does anything about it anyway. So, I'm not surprised. Shrouded Hills says mostly tradcaths. Some of the best content creators that I know out here are tradcaths. I don't have any issues with them. I think that you need to have a good religious sort of foundation, I think, in order to make a society work. Even here in the United States, John Adams had said that you would need a religious, virtuous people to make the republic work. Harris is a Hinduist, and the Bible literally warns us not to worship golden calves. Yes, and Harris also represents a Democratic Party that has no problem sacrificing our kids to Moloch, and here we are. And now all the whites are after Asians. What a bad bunch we are. I know, that cursed multiracial whiteness that the Washington Post keeps talking about. I mentioned that in yesterday's Real Talk, is that, the friend-enemy distinction just got expanded after the 2020 election. They were like, a lot of business class owners who were Hispanic, Black, and Asian were all voting for Trump. I guess we have to call them white now. So here we are. Hello, Forest Bomber. I'm glad that you could stop by. I'm glad that you're here. Always nice to have a new name. New name and new face around here. Minoan says, I find most are insufferable are the charismatics. To be honest, are there that many charismatic tradcaths out there? No offense to the tradcaths that I know and talk to, but it's not like they're the most charismatic bunch out there that I know of. Focron says, Garvin's appearance on Jack Murphy was surprisingly spicy and entertaining. Oh, it was. I watched the whole thing from start to finish. I was working from home on Friday and listening to Jack Murphy just listen to Michael Anton and Curtis just go back and forth was really entertaining. I thought it was kind of funny, though, because it just shows the two different class of people. You could definitely tell who was the writer and who was the podcaster. Michael Anton's got like his whole setup and he's like good to go. He's got that crisp, clean audio. And then Curtis Yarvin's got sort of like the fuzzy laptop camera. The audio would cut in and out. You could definitely tell who was the writer with the spicy takes, and then who was the guy that was used to podcast and news television appearances. You could definitely tell who was who. But the amount of historical knowledge and comparison those two had was absolutely astounding, and I hope to be as well read and understood as those two men are. That I would enjoy. If I could get to that kind of level where I could just cite, late Roman Republic, early Roman Empire stuff like that, I'm in good shape if I can get to that point. Let's see here. Tulsi is Hindu, and she is one of the least bad Democrats, even better than most Republicans. Yeah, it doesn't help, though. As soon as you look up Tulsi Gabbard on the World Economic Forum, she was in that World Economic Forum, youth leaders, organization. The same thing with, Dan Crenshaw and a couple of other prominent, youngish congressional leaders on both parties. And you're like, oh, no, she's ruined. Oh, she's a globalist. That sucks. But I'm not going to, Tulsi might be nice to bring the Democratic Party back to the center. It doesn't help that her position on guns and abortion are pretty much no-go for a lot of Republican voters, even though they liked her for not being as insufferable as, say, Kamala Harris. And we owe a lot to Tulsi Gabbard, though, because she did a very good job of destroying Kamala Harris from ever achieving the nomination, because, let's face it, Kamala Harris, she was Barack Obama's guy. She was the guy that was meeting with, Obama's dudes from campaign staff. They had a meeting in Chicago. All these things were on track to make Harris the heir apparent of the Democratic Party. Had a black woman of color backed by Barry O, and then she gets destroyed on the debate stage, and here we are today. So I cannot say I'm surprised. No one can roast pig like Hawaii. That's very true. They had a luau on that Democratic debate stage, and the pig got roasted. And all that Kamala could do was that really shrill, high-pitched laugh that she always does when she's talking about, putting people's parents in jail. Let's see here. What are my thoughts on the Confederacy and Southern Reconstruction? Oh boy, what a spicy question. So the more and more I've been reading, the more and more I think that the Confederacy was sort of the peak, was the first step of the Anglo tradition of exit being stopped. So there's been numerous studies and numerous things that have described, hey, what is Anglo WASP culture? And exit is the preference here. The Anglos prefer to exit, then and settle their issues with space rather than time. So physical separation, leaving, migrating elsewhere. If you don't like where you are, even here in the United States, right? Even though the demographics are changing, what is the primary modus operandi for, the issues of Anglo settling problems? We disperse, even here in the United States. When we say we don't like someplace, well, why don't you move to another state? Why don't you just go somewhere else? So the Confederacy, of course, becomes the very issue. You have the Anglo example of, okay, we cannot settle our differences. We have an irreparable issue over these matters of state control, slavery, and the growing economic tensions between the North and the South, and how stratified their economies were. So the option, of course, is the Anglo tradition of exit. Of course, that's not going to happen. Why? Because the government at that point, through Lincoln, had changed the Republican form of government to where it is far more centralized and far more authoritarian where we are. A lot of the powers that we bitch and moan about that FDR has, or you can draw a straight line from Lincoln to FDR, regardless of their parties being labeled here. So those are my thoughts on the Confederacy. As for the Southern Reconstruction, 1876 definitely didn't help. I think that a softer Reconstruction would have been helpful rather than the more harsh one, which led to a lot of the issues that we had today. Leopold, thanks for stopping by from AA's Waiting Room stream. We're just celebrating Easter, and we're celebrating that we reached 1,000 subs. Leopold, depending on how long that you're here, if you could just tell AA that the Prudentialist would love to be on stream with the Mr. Academic Agent sometime in the future. I would love to talk about either some foreign affairs or maybe some American politics in the future. So depending on how long you're here, just pass the message along. We greatly appreciate it. But we're here just celebrating 1,000 subs, and we're here just celebrating, the resurrection of our Lord. So it's been a good time. The preservatism says there, Tulsi, Crenshaw, Buttigieg are all cardboard cutouts that are meant to be quote unquote electable and then push forward the social democracy agenda. Very true. And unfortunately, I think the most insufferable one of them all is Crenshaw, because Crenshaw will have an original take once out of every 100 takes, and then the rest are the same normie GOP boomer con arguments that you've heard everywhere. If there was ever going to be a cardboard cutout of the Daily Wire and just try to push as a candidate, that would be it. That would be Dan Crenshaw. And I heard that he's getting primaried. I don't expect the guy primarying him to win, but I will probably chip in $10 his way anyways. Buttigieg faking his bike rides was the most pathetic thing I've seen in a long while. I think the most pathetic thing I've seen in recent politics in terms of like performances was all the media crap that happened when Barack Obama wore a tan suit. That to me was one of the fakest things I've ever seen. And that just irks the absolute crap out of me. Oh, no. Sure, AA started a stream waiting room 2 hours ago. Nothing's happened since. Oh, my. Okay, well, maybe AA has something planned. Maybe not for today, but for tomorrow or something. A Dutch Z says, do you think a name I'm not even going to try to pronounce? Do you know this name? And is it true that the USA used many of theirs on the Declaration of Independence? I'd have to look that up. I'm going to have to check out that name. We'll look up that in a second here. Kyle asks, what do you think of Trump's new website that he has launched? Do you think he will make a comeback, especially when the country needs it? So my answer to that is going to be, it's great that Trump's making a website. I think that if there's going to be anything that the Trump brand and him as a political figure can take advantage of, it would be for a place where Trump can talk about Trump 24/7, 7 days a week. Good for him. And that it's nice. I don't think that it will do a lot of good unless he has some serious people who are actually going to make it with a friendly user interface. Because the problem that you have with Vote or Gab or Minds, Minds is a little different, but I mean, with most alt-tech social media, if the user interface isn't nice and it's more convenient to use than traditional social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., then it's dead on arrival. When things look like they're made by boomer cons and they run like they're made by boomer cons, people don't want to use them. And that becomes the problem, I think, that Trump is going to have with making a website. And as long as Trump has people like Ivanka and Kushner around him and not people like Bannon or Miller, then what good is it going to be, right? You're going to get more of the same impotent playing around with the current system. I don't have an appetite for it. It's not my cup of tea. I do not want him to come back. In the traditional, and he does have a crazy following. He does. Like, don't get me wrong, because he can piss off the left by simply putting out press releases, and people are still talking about him, even though he's been banned off Twitter for months. That does not change the fact that even though the press keeps him alive and this current administration blames him for all of their problems, I don't think the fact that he's been virtually silenced, it would be almost impossible for him to capture the same kind of media attention that helped propel him over the finish line in 2016. After that, plus he's too old. I think that what Trump should do in traditional political lens is play kingmaker. I think he needs to continue to pressure the states through threat of primaries and through the threat of funding to make sure that more states do things like the Georgia voting law. And unless that happens, what good are we doing? None of that happens. Rex Tillerson was base too. I'm going to disagree. Rex Tillerson ended up acting in the same way. He ended up turning against Trump. He ended up watching over Trump because he thought that he couldn't trust him. He had said something, I think, with either John Kelly or Jim Mattis, saying that one of them would always keep their eye on Trump at all times, whether or not one of them was in the country or not. So it's not like I really no, thank you. So that would be my issue there. 150 people still waiting. I hope that one day I can get to 150 people waiting for me. Focron says, I love it when Navy SEALs think that being professional killers somehow makes them experts on geopolitics and foreign policy. Well, the same thing can happen with the inverse, where professional, like, spooks think that they can then be experts on domestic policy and economics and whatnot. I'm making fun of Will Hurd there, but that's where we're at. Forrest asking more spicy questions. How do I feel about restricting left-wing speech in the name of preserving our country? Mike, so this is where I take issue with a lot of, like, quote-unquote restrictions or moderation or I guess power that is used there. Because the question becomes, right, especially if you're operating within a democratic system, you have a high time preference because you don't know how long you're going to be in power. And so, like, the Patriot Act is a really good example. Patriot Act is used and passed by a Republican administration. Both houses of Congress pretty much pass it almost unanimously after 9/11. But the powers of the Patriot Act would then be used by a Democratic president, Barack Obama, and by extension have it used against his political enemies through the banking system and the IRS against conservative groups during an election year in 2012 against Tea Party and conservative PACs across the United States. So my issue is that if you want to preserve a democratic system where there's a plurality and, like, we have a plural system of government with competing parties left and right or whatever, you would be best be careful about restriction of speech and restriction of that sort of stuff, because you may not be in power forever. You should plan for it, because anyone who understands power should always plan to be in power for a long time and have contingencies in place. But you won't be in power forever. People inevitably die. People inevitably change their minds on things. It may come back to bite you. Do I think that the right should move on from Trump? Yes. Like, don't get me wrong, Trump did a lot of things right. Trump did a lot of things in terms of reorienting the Republican Party, I think, for the best, which of course pissed off the establishment because no one likes it when the proles are in the golf club and the country club. But I also get the argument that there's no Trumpism without the Trump, but don't call it Trumpism. I mean, this is where I think a lot of the America First people are right. Just call it nationalist populism. And I think that you would get a lot further from there. And I think that you get a lot of Zoomers, right, that are talking about, like, Ron DeSantis being the way of the future. And I kind of agree. That guy actually knows how to govern. That guy knows how to fight back. And the guy seems to be doing a relatively good job with COVID in his state. So they're going to try their best to take him down. I think that Trump should play kingmaker and make Ron the nominee in 24 if we're going to use traditional politics as a route. Why people get political power and then don't wield it? I would take leftist freedom of speech away in a heartbeat. Well, I mean, cool. Why people don't get political power and then don't wield it? Well, in part because from the 1960s onward, right, we've been telling white people don't collectively organize in any sort of political fashion. And then in doing so, let's go import millions of non-white people into the country. That way we can make sure that they don't act on their political power. And then when they do, we call it white nationalism or white supremacy. And that's been the greatest trick that they've ever played from the 1960s onward here in the United States. People like the distributist are probably right that national political action is useless, but I live in South Africa, and I can tell you that here that local politics matters. And so, like, one of the things that I've really agreed with Dave on has been the fact that Dave is right, where if you're going to engage politically, it cannot be just voting. And if the 2020 election is proof of anything, it's that doesn't matter. What does matter is getting people organized, mobilized, and on the ground actually doing things. Because networking locally matters more than anything. Like, this is the whole thing about, like, the small town approach and what I've been talking about. If you can have 1 million different small towns in America that all have their own laws, their own schools, their own institutions that you can effectively coordinate to keep out infiltrators and to keep out newcomers and to be, putting yourself in policies that promote healthy families and promote healthy education, homeschooling, and birth rates, it'll be a lot harder for the cathedral to come up with a strategy to take down 1,000 different places at 1,000 different times and in 1,000 different states and cities and municipalities. That's my position. Does that mean that you abandon national politics? No, you don't. there are still places where it matters. There are still places where you can affect change. I think the thing is that people put too much focus on national elections, and people put too much attention on just the representatives and the campaigns. That's not what people should be putting their attention on. People should be putting their attention on like committee hearings. People should be putting their attention upon who gets nominated for cabinet secretary positions, and people should be more concerned about who gets to be the undersecretary of some department under the USDA that's going to affect how their farm subsidies get distributed. Those are things that people should be focusing on. That's where I agree with Dave on the most, is that if you're going to be focused on national politics, then for the love of God, stop focusing all of your eggs on the elections basket and start focusing on the people that wield actual power, which are the unelected bureaucrats of this country. That tends to be the case in most Western democracies. They're far more oligarchical because the power is decentralized, and Congress writes shell policy where the department and section chiefs of all these executive branches then determine what the laws are, and then the president just signs off on it and then goes forward from there. So if you're going to be focusing on national politics, you need to be focusing a lot more on the bureaucracy of the executive branch, more so than the legislative. Yes, focus on the legislative because they can still sometimes pass really shitty laws, but that does not mean you take your eye off the ball when it comes to the other national issues as well. So that's my take on the national versus local politics is on that issue. There are 19,500 towns in the U.S., 15,000 of them with populations under 5,000. Yes, and that's how it should. Well, and that would be the way to go. Is that it's going to be a lot harder, especially in the United States, because through all the formalism that still exists in the U.S., the one thing that is definitely to the right's advantage is that there's still a federalist system, and because there's still a federal system, you're going to have a lot more of a chance at fighting back against the current system, because it's going to be a lot harder for them to take on each individual municipality, each individual small town, each individual well-armed, well-educated, well-employed small town that can take care of themselves. That's going to be even harder, especially if you can become self-sufficiency on that issue. Let's see here. Trump set the standard for economic and foreign policy, which is why he was so effective. What do you think the next big development on the right will entail? Family stuff. The next big development I think that's going to come from the right, especially is the right kind of attains a weird racial consciousness, especially if it's going to try and pursue this working class shtick that it's been going on. I think the right is definitely going to be doing more of the pro-family stuff, which is weird, right? Because the right is moving in this direction where, like, we're back to the 1960s, where we're seeing, like, Patrick David Moynihan policy, where we're talking about, like, money and financial and economic incentives for having kids and taking care of the kids so moms can be back in the house. Like, I'm all for it. The question becomes, like, can it be manageable and can it work? But I think that the family issue and, facilitating healthier, larger families is going to be an issue there, especially if the right hopefully maintains a stricter immigration position. All right, so Star says, my question is how to persuade people on the local level. I'm not a very charismatic person, and I think I'm way to the right of Joe Normie to convince them of the more wholesome right-wing stances. White pill NRX is far too away from today's Normie, in my opinion. Yes. Okay. So that's probably true. The real good test of a person's political ideology is that you go to a bar and you ask them if you've heard of this. And if they've heard of it, then it's probably within the Overton window. And if it's not, then, well, that person's mainly on the internet. But no one, when it comes to like engaging locally or trying to pressure local issues, don't frame it in the NRX position. Don't go to your town hall meeting and talk about the cathedral for 20 minutes. Like, that's a waste of your time. If you're going to go to these local meetings, and the way that you talk to them is that you try your best to be polite, presentable. You don't have to be charismatic, but you have to provide a good argument for whatever you're standing for. So if we're talking about taxes, or if we're talking about, say, a bond hearing for, putting a bond motion for your local community to vote on to raise taxes on property to pay for schools, you need to be willing to go to these meetings and be willing to go to these hearings to make your logical argument for it. These people want to spend the money. These people want to spend their taxes. You need to give them a reason not to. What's the reason to do so? Well, why do we not want to do that? Well, one, raising the bond is going to raise property taxes, which prevents people from owning homes, which creates an issue in terms of, say, it makes housing more affordable, which of course, if you need to frame it in a leftist lens, do as necessary. Like, hey, raising property taxes in the area is going to make it housing more unaffordable for people of color and working class families. If you want to take care of teachers, I would suggest you work with your local school board to reorganize the budget to ensure that teachers are paid in a way that they need, so they're not spending their own money for supplies. Try and make it an economic argument, or as they say in Saving Private Ryan, a detractable waste of company resources or something like that. Like, that's the way that you need to go about it. So that's going to be the way that it goes. And parallelism is definitely the way to do about it. Is just like, listen, hey, you're going to, pass this policy, but that's not going to stop me and 10 of my neighbors from just, creating a homeschool network at home, and we're not going to need you. And what's the point of my money going to you if I'm not going to be spending it on the schools and the school supplies and the things for my kids? You don't have to be this suave, charismatic public speaker or polemicist like, say, I am, in order to be an effective force on the ground. Nor do you have to be a radical. But if you can start actually showing up and moving the needle a little further away from the center or from the left, then you're doing a good job. And that's what we need to focus on. The problem that I think that the right has in general is that we look a lot of things as a zero-sum game when we need to be looking at it as a positive-sum game and taking our wins wherever we can get them. So that's the localism stuff there that I think that would be worth looking into. So AA's finally seen his mistake and shut the stream down. Well, maybe he was setting it up for more car. Who knows? What are my thoughts on fascism, and would you be interested in making a video on it? I thought about doing a video on the famous piece of fascism and just sort of talking about it and how we have these very loose definitions of what fascism is, to a point where rhetorically and linguistically that's almost done on purpose in order to call anything we don't like online fascism. That seems to be the modern strategy of most leftists these days. I'm not a fan of it. I do adhere to a more Austrian economic worldview. I do adhere to a more Christian ethics worldview. And I think that, as people like Per Byland and Stephen Carson will tell you, that these things require strong moral systems to back them up. I'm not a fan of fascism for that reason. I don't want state control over the economy. And so I might do a video on it, just on the premises of what it is and my issues with it. But I'm not a supporter of it. Let's see here. You have my attention for now, by the way. I think you would get along with Louis Leval. I love Louis Leval, or Levi. I love listening to him. He's the most base New Yorker I have ever met, and I've dealt with a lot of New Yorkers in my life. I would love to do a stream with Louis Leval and just talk about the news and talk about just political strategy. That would make my day. He's my favorite person. I love his Copcat streams. He and I are on the same point there. When there's a really sick form of Schadenfreude I get from just watching idiots just fuck around and find out with the cops. Mark says, your particular talent seems to be the ability to connect entry-level information to actionable advice and advanced ideas. Well, I certainly try my best to make the advanced stuff digestible. I definitely enjoy trying my best to connect a lot of the things that I read up on. And like I said, like a year and a half ago, I was very normie-con. And then I lived out now I live out in the middle of the country. I live in a rural area. I live in a much more redder part of the United States. And I've definitely moved further to the right. Like, I appreciate the importance of family, tradition, structure, neighborhoods, like all the things that like my Ron Paul loving self would have detested, 3 or 4 years ago. So I try my best as I learn and read and do the work. People do that meme, do the work. but I try my best to do the reading. So whatever I learn, I try to make it as accessible and digestible to everyone else. But yeah, I'll reach out to him. I'll tweet at him and invite him on to do a newscast kind of stream and talk about the GOP. I'll shoot him a message. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I'm definitely going to give it a shot. Lock Ian says, what are your thoughts on doomers and the memes around them? Seriously. Like I've mentioned before, I think it's important to resist the black pill. And while it's important to be sobered on the reality of what we're dealing with and the fact that things may not get better anytime soon, and that things will most likely get worse before they get better, and that's probably true, the important thing to recognize is that you yourself cannot be atomized or idealize the end of it all or want doom to happen to you. If there's one thing I've noticed when it comes to talking politics is that a lot of these individuals want you atomized, alone, isolated, and not talking to anybody, and just accept that this is your fate, and that you're going to be in the wage cage, and that nothing good is ever going to happen to you, and that you should just off yourself or take drugs. No, that is exactly what they want, so you shouldn't be doing that. And the reason why I'm also not a doomer, or that I don't like, engaging in a lot of black pill conversation, although I'm aware of the sobering reality, is that I myself am in a rather black pilling situation. Like, I'm aware of how screwed things are in the real world and how screwed things are in the cities or in Washington or on the global stage. But like, you're talking to a 25-year-old kid, and I call myself a kid because I wish I had my life a little more together, but I'm getting there. But you're talking to a 25-year-old man who, for all intents and purposes, is healthy, but he needs a kidney. And I do dialysis every night, and I do everything that I can to stay healthy. I try my best to live a good life. I've gotten back in terms of religion. I do all of my things in my own life to be as good as I can for others around me. I try to set a decent example for both you guys and everywhere else that I go. So when it comes to the question about doomers, I think that it's important to not be one. Be aware that the reality sucks and that things are sobering. But there are things that you can do to make it better in your own personal space. And not to take a line from Jordan Peterson, but the thing about cleaning your room and getting your act together before you engage on a greater scale matters. Because what's the point of trying to change the world if you can't even get your shit together? So that's my thought on the doomers question. And moving down the line, Johan asks, what is my opinion on the push for vaccine passports? I did tweet about it the other day, and I had said that it's going to be pushed a lot. It's going to be normalized a lot quicker and a lot more accepted by a majority of the population than you think. And the reason why I say that is because think about the fact that how many people have smartphones. Think about the fact that how many John Q normies have, social media accounts and scan their QR codes for like their restaurants when they go dine in with their masks on at the local Denny's or something. It's going to be pushed, and it's going to be very easy to regulate. Ironically, it's going to backfire because it's going to be affecting inner city black people the most in the United States. Which, I mean, it doesn't matter that people have pointed out the obvious contradiction that a voter ID is racist, but vaccine passports aren't. But you're going to get some pushback. And but the ironic thing is that you're going to get pushback not necessarily from righties, like the righties are going to push back, but it's going to be those anti-vax leftoids that are going to push back the hardest. Because it's like, well, we're going to do a vaccine passport for COVID, but my little, Tristan with like 5 Y's in the kid's name hasn't gotten his MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella shot. So what are we going to do about that? So, I mean, it'll be pushed, and we're already seeing it happen in the UK, which is downright terrifying. But I think that you're going to see some pushback from some anti-vax leftists, especially here in the United States upon the Pacific Northwest. But it'll be normalized a lot quicker than I think people realize, and that's the scary thing. So you are white Phil or white pill. I assume you mean am I a white pill? I try to be. I'm aware. I want people to be aware that things are going to suck, but there are things that we can do to make it suck less, and that's my position. Do you think that the state of the country, like me, is like 1920s Germany? Anytime I hear a Weimar Republic comparison, I always tell people if they can't, go watch Academic Agent and Charlemagne's stream on the Weimar Republic comparison, because that's more or less my position on the Weimar comparisons. Although I don't think that we're seeing anyone push for a Lebensraum anytime soon, except maybe the Russians, but even then, not so much. Reminds me of Michael Malice's troll take of, would your opinion on the subject be the same if you were more traditionally attractive? Very true. Very true. Michael Malice is great. I may disagree with him because he's an anarchist, but Michael Malice knows how to play the linguistics in the troll game, and he's very good at it. And if the right wing could have an activist class of like Michael Malice's or Jack Posobiec's on Twitter, like 24/7, like the share blue shills, the right could get a lot more done in terms of like media outreach and changing the narrative. That's what we need, is an activist class, and the right needs a better version of it. Superb discourse, going back and forth, brilliant scene, to be learning a lot. You got folks are great. Well, thanks, Kyle. I'm glad that you're learning something. I hope that you can enjoy all this stuff, and I hope that more of you can. Ouchie says that that Thielman plan for global domination is undermined by some crystal Karens from Portland. I mean, if it works, it works. I'm not going to care that, you know, their issue there is going to happen. I mean, if they think healing crystals and their auras and their chakras and their vibes is what's going to kill the COVID passport, I'm all for it. But I do think that you're going to see some pushback from the anti-vax leftists that are more prominent in the United States when it comes to the COVID vaccine issue. I don't think it'll be pressed here. And what they'll do, though, of course, is that they're going to use the right's love of the free market, quote unquote, trademark, and just say, well, no, we won't do it. We'll just let private companies do it. And then you get all the lolberts out there that are like, yeah, I'm okay with COVID passports if a company does it. And it's like, congratulations, you pretty much shut out half the country from wanting to engage in the marketplace, and fuck you. And that's where we're at. Reject bioethics, embrace projects to clone Michael Malice as many times as needed. I'm all for it. We could use 100 Michael Malices on Twitter 24/7, and that would be the way to go. What are my thoughts on the right wing starting 17? Oh, the big igloo question. As I've said before, it won't work. The security apparatus and the intelligence apparatus of the current regime is way too powerful that even the slightest amount of high energy activism, like we saw in January of last year, is going to be crushed by the boot of the state. You cannot do that. Whatever is going to have to be done, and as Curtis Yarvin, I think, is accurately pointed out, is going to be low energy. You are going to have to channel the ritualistic near religiosity of our current system of democracy and try to get that to change the system from the current mechanisms. And I think that you're already seeing that with a lot of focus on voting laws and, you know, primarying certain candidates. That'll be the way forward. Until the regime doesn't have the security apparatus in place to cramp down on just your normie boomer con protesters, there's no point in trying to engage in that kind of attitude. And most of that stuff feels kind of Fed posty anyways. Kyle asks, what are your thoughts on the Georgia being canceled for major corporations and needed ID to vote? Any company that says these things are not in line with our corporate values means these things are not in line with whatever the state wants. I mean, corporate values is an empty, meaningless bullshit term that is used to try and personify in person large corporations. And of course, the right wing traditionally has been okay with that because the right supports big business. Thankfully, that's beginning to change, and I'm all for it. Now, the right's punishing these companies by taking away like their tax credits or looking at the MLB's antitrust situation. And this is where the right gets in trouble, because the right has said, oh, well, the right's just engaging in cancel culture. And it's like, don't call it cancel culture, because this implies, one, that there is some sort of shared culture, monoculture that we all have. We don't. The second thing is that by calling it cancel culture, it just means that, the right can be called a hypocrite. And if there's one thing that we've noticed in this world of hierarchy and hypocrisy is that the right will crumple when it's called a hypocrite. The left won't. So stop calling it cancel culture. Don't call it accountability culture. Don't call it any kind of culture. That's the issue that we've got there on that issue. These corporations are going to be involved in politics because that's where the power lies. It is decentralized away from the responsibilities of the people. These corporations can fund PACs. And it goes back to that argument that the distributists made, is that your vote doesn't matter in terms of worth compared to the billions that get spent every year in campaign finance. And that's the issue. What matters more, the money or the one person? Nominally, the one person matters more, but at the end of the day, it's the money. So that's an issue there. Let's go down the line here. What are my thoughts on Philosophy Tube's abortion episode? I haven't watched Philosophy Tube's abortion episode, nor do I plan on it, so I really don't have too much to comment there. As I've said last Sunday, I do not watch a lot of BreadTube. I follow a lot of BreadTubers on Twitter, and that's about it. I don't really watch their content. Until someone makes a video about me and I have to respond to it, sure. But until then, ain't gonna happen. I'm fervently pro-life. Abortion is murder, and that's my position. Archangelus says, thoughts on South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. She's done a lot of good, but then she attended Biden's inauguration and congratulated him. That kind of ruined my opinion of her. What ruined my opinion of Kristi Noem was the caving to the NCAA and not signing the Keep Trans Kids Out of Women's Sports bill. It's kind of funny that women's sports has become the hill that the Republicans want to die on, but I mean, hey, whatever ends the war on women argument, so go for it. But I'm not a fan of Kristi Noem. Not to mention she's been backed by a lot of corporate money, and I'm not a fan of her. Answer to criticism, my enemies are evil. I don't care what they say. Yep, that's pretty much John the Pleb's position, is that these people are evil communists, and we shouldn't have to treat them as anywhere nicer. The right always uses the leftist dialectic. It's so annoying. Yes, the right uses the leftist dialectic, and it doesn't flourish or function because the right doesn't thrive off contradiction, whereas the left does. And I mean, like I said, I'm probably going to do a whole spiel on the Dark Enlightenment one of these days, because there's a whole bit on dialectics there that's worth talking about. If you want right-wing activism, you have to hire a bunch of pretty girls to produce online content for us. It's really easy. Just have them read a script in front of the camera. I call this the Lauren Rose tactic. Ah, yes, get the simps. Probably. I mean, that's kind of what Fox News does, right? Because like every woman on Fox News is like, what, a slender blonde woman? And that'd be the way to do it. So, I mean, but there needs to be right-wing activism, and it's nice that a bunch of like white kids can go on a camera and do it. Don't get me wrong; it's some of my best content creators that I watch are a bunch of white kids putting out political content. But I think that there does need to be a bit of traditional appeal, and that would be the way to go about it. I'm all for it. You can't fight nature. Yep, I agree. The Prudentialist, what would the cathedral have to do to provoke an actual large snowy dome? If you're speaking in coded language there, I'm going to have to ask you to be a little more straightforward on that. But if not, I'm not sure what you mean by large snowy dome. Like who do I enjoy following and who do I enjoy listening to in terms of content creators? So people who I enjoy listening to, I'll just give a few off the top of my head. Apostolic Majesty, I enjoy because he's incredibly well versed in history. I am looking forward to streaming with him this Wednesday. He's got a knack for it, unlike any other that I've seen recently that I really enjoy. Charlemagne, Settler's Lament, The Distributist, Clossington, although he's no longer on Twitter, Conscious Caracol. I do enjoy Sargon. As for the left of center stuff that I enjoy Kyle Kalinske. I enjoy Dave Pacman. Shoe on Head on occasion, although I don't find her funny. And I also enjoy Short Fat Utaku, even though he's more of a liberal, center-left, anti-woke. But those are the people that I like listening to. So that's my launch list. And, of course, Academic Agent. So that's who those are my list, left and the right, that I enjoy. I don't know if you can tell. Most of them are white. Oh, Big Igloo. What the cathedral would have to do to provoke that kind of action would start seriously federalizing a lot of one executive action on most firearms would probably be a good start. But you would need to start eliminating most aspects of due process. Because right now, for most things that happen between government conduct and action, you can typically get recourse legally. The moment that you take away legal recourse and you're at sort of the Great Depression levels where people are getting like homes foreclosed or seized by the state, and there's no avenue of recourse, you're going to start seeing vigilantism and sort of auto defense style tactics happen here. Start taking away people's property and start taking away their right to due process. That's going to be the tinderbox that gets lit on fire that would cause that sort of thing to happen. But until then, the frog is just going to be slowly boiled in the water. Thank you to the Prudentialist. I wish I could support you financially someday when you decide to monetize. Well, I would say I'm 75% of the way there. So we reached 1,000 subs and we're halfway there on the watch hours. But if you are interested in that sort of stuff, what we can do, of course, is I can just shill for a little bit. And I'll just share my screen real quick. I'm not a fan of David Pakman and Kyle. They're not as insane as other, they're not bread tubers. That's why I like listening to them, is that they're not as insane. Kyle Kalinske is just an idiot because he doesn't necessarily know things like farmland, but David Pakman is at least rational on policy. So, I mean, yeah, they're not as bad as BreadTube, and so that's why I listen to them. And of course, Don the Pleb is the guy I had my first stream with and conversation with, so I'm a huge fan of him. Don is probably one of the hardest working people I have ever met. I've actually met him IRL, and I had a great time getting to know him. And him and John Doyle actually do things on the ground and get people encouraged to actually engage, and I like them both a lot. Not being bread tubers is a pretty low bar. I mean, I don't think it's that low of a bar. Like, at least Kyle Kalinske and David Pakman aren't insane. Whereas, say, Philosophy Tube or Thlot Slime are just head empty, repeat NPC script. Using attractive women to promote your message selects the non-serious people and subverts right-wing thinking. Women personality should only be used to promote modesty. Yeah, I mean, yeah, more classical appies, except less small hats. The value of these conversations would really help everyone out in the world. Yeah, I'm trying my best to record everything that I put out here. I'm slowly uploading to BitChute, and I might start making BitChute exclusives when I have more time. But I'm putting everything out there. I'm also going to start uploading as a backup to Odyssey as well. So I'm trying my best to diversify. It's just when you have a full-time job and then you make these videos and then you do these streams, you make do with what you can. But yes, I will do that. Mark, that's a very good idea. Trusting people who call themselves slime. Absolutely. So there is the link to my Subscribestar. I don't post on it as much as I should, but that's the link to it in case you're interested in supporting financially. There's no obligation for you to do so. I know that someone had just mentioned it earlier. I don't want to make this a thing where I'm going to e-beg or ask for money or shill. I'm not that kind of guy. But yeah, that's, if you're interested, that's where it is. Thought about, have you thought about this, getting Styx on the show? I would love to. I listen to Styx a lot. He's very good when it comes to international issues. He was talking about Ebola outbreaks and the coronavirus outbreaks before a lot of major news networks were. So I'm all for it. I would love to have him on, especially if we're going to talk about international relations. I think that he and I share a lot of common non-interventionist positions there. Plus, he's very familiar with how things work. The Dalhuck says, the Prudentialist, was that you at the Harris thing? Yes. Were you the other gentleman that was with Don where we all had a beer? Because that was me. That was me, yeah. It was nice to meet Don IRL. Plus, it was cool to actually attend a political rally. I had spent most of my time living in a place where major political events don't get to happen. So it was cool to see just a sliver of the craziness that was the 2020 election. And then listening to that little Hispanic lady introduce Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States was just downright heartbreaking, because you're like, oh, she's probably right. We're at a point now where Joe Biden is the same as Woodrow Wilson post World War I, where he had his stroke and his wife was running the country. That's where we're at with Kamala Harris. But no one's going to say anything about it, because to say that would mean that the United States worked its best to get an entire country, with a mentally ill man in the White House. But that would imply that your vote mattered in the first place. Oh, that was you. Well, that's cool. Thanks, Dollhawk. That was nice to know that it all worked out and everyone's okay. But yeah, crazy time. And now it's nice to know that you watched the channel as well. Lock Ian says, do you think conservatives need a new manifesto? What would that entail, and how would you get normies on our side? I do think that there needs to be some kind of new manifesto. I think that it needs to be a lot more working class. At the current point right now, I do think that the greatest traditional political coalition in the future is going to be a working class multi-ethnic coalition, because one, it breaks down the progressive coalition on race, it breaks down the progressive coalition on class issues, and it allows the right to champion things like family and tradition and good schools and things that matter. How you would do that, I think, is that you would kind of do the traditional route where you publicize it very openly. You would do what Newt Gingrich did back in the 90s about the contract with America. If you do that, then that would be the way forward. Shrouded Hills doxed. Yeah, no, that's not happening. I don't think I know. And the Dalhuck doesn't even know my actual name. He just knows what I look like. Let's see here. There are riots in Northern Ireland. I'm not surprised. I think, is it over the lockdowns? It's got to be. What are my thoughts on John Doyle? I like John Doyle a lot. I think he's been doing a lot of good work lately. His recent 2 videos that he's done on woke capital and pornography were like some of his best. So John Doyle is definitely up there. Plus, he did that debate with Lauren Witzke about like the need for still having like social conservatism on the right. And I think he was talking with Poroshenko and that other lady, quote unquote lady. So, I mean, good for them. I like John Doyle a lot. Oh, it's about Brexit. Well, I'm not surprised. The Northern Ireland question, of course, was going to get renewed once, things started kicking off and leaving the European Union. Let's see here. Thoughts on the trichotomy and the false left-right paradigm. The left-right paradigm keeps things within an Overton window within the framework of liberalism. I haven't given much thought on the trichotomy other than the video Charlemagne has done on it, which I enjoyed, and I do agree with a lot of what he put out there in terms of information. Unless you're referring to the trichotomy of like the traditional like 3 Enlightenment philosophies that end up emerging of socialism, fascism, and liberalism. And if that's the case, then here we are. And I know, yeah, Lauren did have a talk with Yves the other night, and it was a really good talk. I'm very glad that they had that conversation. I don't think that it needs... Dan, I'm going to have to disagree on the fact that, because the question becomes this, right? Like you can keep goals in the dark, but you can keep things that you want to do nominally within the system broadcasted publicly, because you need to recruit people to your side. The right has a terrible position on, getting people recruited to the right's cause. Our traditional ways of doing it through our families and communities is nothing compared to social media, the schools, academia, the press, all of that compared to the left. I think that having a manifesto that nominally outlines our goals is fine, but the things that we want to do, say like dismantle the regime, you don't need to make that public at all. Let's see here. Bio-Stalinism. I would actually like to bring you Pol. Do you want to do a stream on that, on pole position, and talk about Bio-Stalinism and Bio-Leninism? I know that you've done one with Mr. Patriarch, but I would love to do one with you, because I think that you can go there's sort of this logical line of how the leftist ratchet turns from Bio-Leninism to Bio-Stalinism, and to kind of where we are now with racial kulaks and how we're seeing whiteness. Do you ever catch anything out on that pond on Real Talk? I have never caught anything on while recording. No, I do know that there are smallmouth bass and sunfish out on that pond, and I've caught them quite a few times with the beetle spin lure on there. So I'm all for it. And will I catch anything while I'm recording? one of these days, and that'll be the real talk where I'll say something sort of snarky about, like, here's to say that I actually catch something. But yes, there are actual fish on that pond. There's also a ton of frogs and a ton of turtles out there. So lots of life in that pond. I just haven't caught anything yet while I'm recording. Bio-Stalinism racing to be the next Spandrel. Yeah, except Jonathan has got an actual historical basis for his claim. And Ricardo, Jonathan's got a PhD in, I believe it's Eurasian studies and history. Like, he knows the USSR very, very well. So he knows what he's doing. And Jonathan, just DM me and we can schedule a time to come on stream. Star Cavalier says, the Potentialist, it sounds like you keep up with a huge range of people and topics. How are you doing this in managing a job? Watching their videos at 2x speed while on the job, I couldn't keep up. I streamed with him many times. Well, there you go, Ricardo. I didn't know. My bad. I do keep up with a wide range of things. I do have a particular penchant, so to speak, for foreign policy and international relations, because that's what I studied in college. However, I do listen to a lot of videos at 2x speed, and at the same time, I also my commute to work from where I live is about 45 minutes. So anytime that I go to work, I just plug my headphones in and I pick something that I want to listen to or study or learn up more on, and I listen to it there. And the nice thing is that sometimes I can work from home, so I can have my work laptop in front of me, and my job is very mundane and boring, so I can just do that while at the same time I can have either a script in front of me, or I can have a video or someone else's live stream going on in the background. So I try my best very, very hard to learn as much and consume as much as content as I can from people that I like, as well as reading as much as I like. Plus, you guys do a very good job at helping me learn more. So remind me, my wonderful mods, to put out a poll on Twitter so I can get May's Prudent Reads book up, because I do have a few suggestions for you all. So let's see here. Islam could kind of be our Trojan horse. The left rolled them in as their token, but if the right wants, they can easily become our strength. But do we want to? Maybe we have to. I don't know. The issue with that is that, unlike the West, right, they do have a sense of cohesion, identity, and they're willing to defend it, and they're willing to defend their faith. They're far more zealous than we are. And to a point where we're now seeing right-wing parties in Europe actively market themselves to homosexuals, being like, hey man, we're the anti-immigrant party, and these people keep importing immigrants that want to throw you off the rooftop, so vote for us. It's a very weird bedfellows. So I don't think that they'll be, I mean, they're kind of a Trojan horse, but at the end of the day, our primary enemy is woke techno-capital, because if there's no woke techno-capital, then Islam isn't being imported to the West, and then we don't have that problem. Then we can all kind of just get along. But while I'm here, let me put some things for you all to look at on screen, because it's just been my profile picture for way too long. There we go. Let's see here. We'll go on for a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up shortly, probably at the 2-hour mark. Do I view Steven Crowder as a Giorndis/grifter? I used to. I think that he's definitely moved more towards the right on a lot of issues. I think the fact that he's been very adamant about some of the anomalies that took place in November, and the fact that he hasn't stepped down from them, and he's more adamant on the social issues, I think has made him far less of a grifter and far more of an activist. Plus, I mean, the demonetization adpocalypse thing from Carlos Maza, I really think made it stop being so much of a grift, and he sort of doubled down and got more ballsy with things. So I don't view him as a grifter. I definitely think he's just more of a mainstream activist, and that's fine by me. But yeah, he does good work. And so yeah, here's a little springtime Pac-Man frog and some, I think, blueberries in the background. I enjoy this. My comment got censored by YouTube. Oh no, that's not good. Did you comment on a recent video? I mean, you've commented on other videos in the past. I do get notifications though when people comment, but I know that in the past, I think you've had comments hidden, which always sucks. The U.S. has been actively trying to pause Islam in the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa, and it's created anti-U.S. hostility. Yes, there are some obscure, austere religious scholars that are very right about that, and they're not going to stop anytime soon. And that's the thing, right? We talk about this on the Clash of Civilization stream, is that Islam isn't trying to make Islam modern. They're trying to Islamize modernity, and the United States and the West is trying to modernize Islam. And that's where you're getting this shroud of Islamic sentiment, or anti-American and anti-Western sentiment out of the Islamic world. Where do I get all of these pictures of frogs from? So Reddit is a great place for really niche hobbies and things that you like. Don't go to like the front page or r/all. Just go stick to the things that you like. There's a subreddit called r/frogs, and that's where I get a lot of these pictures from. I also follow like a frog of the day account on Twitter. They make me happy. I like looking at them. That's where it's enjoyable. So that's how it is. That's what I enjoy. That's where I get them from. Yeah, I did post a lot of frogs there, Kyle. It's fine. Hopefully you won't spam them as much. But that's why I have good mods. These algorithms will get crazy this decade. Oh, they're only going to get crazier, especially because a lot of the things that with the COVID and the election stuff, like those things aren't going away, especially because the YouTube is not going to be going anywhere in terms of like working from home. So it's going to be very hard for us to have actual accountability from YouTube, which, I mean, thankfully others video streaming sites are coming in onto their own. Rumble, Odyssey. I mean, hell, even Dailymotion gets used by people like Styx. Witsky did well with Yiz. It looked better there than when she was on Slightly Offensive. Well, I mean, does Lauren do a lot of video stuff? I know that she was on Twitter quite often, but I don't know. Does she have a channel? Because if so, I'm going to have to start following her. First Pac-Man and Kalinsky, now Reddit. Normie, I know, right? I mean, we all, like I said in my video, I have not yet begun. We all have our vices. And there they are. My vices are normie tier lefty commentators and using Reddit for obscure things like just frogs. But yeah. All right. It has been almost 2 hours now, so I'm going to do a little bit of shilling, if you don't mind. But yeah, I think when I get settled in with things, I think I'm going to have a bunch of these frogs as pets. They're relatively affordable to take care of. But here we go. Share screen. So I'm a quarter of the way, I'm 75% of the way there to being monetized. And we just need the view hours now. So if you all keep on watching, we'll get there and we'll do just fine. But if not, here on Subscribestar, the Prudentialist is where you can find me. And no obligation, no hassle, but there you go. Locke Ian says, do you think people who have OD'd on black pills can be reached out, aka doomers? I think so. I think that you can frame, I mean, that's why we have the bloomer meme, right? That you have the doomer, you know, and then the bloomer, the people that kind of see the daylight and then they see the sunrise and things are going to be okay. I think you can. You just need to know how to talk to them on their terms. Like, I think AA is incredibly black-pilled, but I don't think he's a doomer, right? For example, like, you can talk to him, and he's, you know, as Melphis will tell you in my comment section that, you know, he awaits the day that white-pilled people are black-pilled, but I disagree. I think that you can have people on who are, you know, they're black-pilled, but not necessarily doomers, that can see the importance of engaging today wherever you can. So, but yeah, we've made it to over 1,000 subscribers, and I'm incredibly happy with that. I plan to keep on doing the works as the meme goes, and I plan on making appearances, and I plan on talking to people, and I plan on networking and learning more and sharing everything that I learn with you all. As someone who doesn't get out a lot, in part due to my job and then the dialysis and waiting for a kidney, I'm very happy that I have this little community where I can talk with you, bounce my ideas off of all of y'all, and give you all a place for some entertainment as well as some, enjoy the same things that I get to read about and learn about and interact with others. So the fact that in this 5-month span of time, we went from, a guy that just chatted with Don the Pleb on happenstance on Twitter to over 1,000 subs, these videos where we have Monday morning musings or real talk or our scripted stuff. I'm very happy with how things are going and the growth that we've achieved. I don't want to do a lot of drama stuff in the future, but hey, I will definitely call and tag people when I put out videos for more promotion in the future, because that seems to be doing very well. Will there be more metaphorical pills in the future? Maybe. If Curtis ever finishes his clear pill essays, I'd like to see what the clear pill looks like post 2020 election. But other than that, I think what's important is that we're here to do what we can in order to make the world even a slightly better place in the future. So I want to wish you all a very happy Easter. And the philosophy of don't do anything IRL is cringe. It's useless to fight back. It's absolutely useless. I agree, Joshua Ham. Do what you can in real life. I think that you should be able to, and do what you can to engage with others in real life. And if you don't, then what's the point? There's only so much you can do on the internet through online activism. You need to put your money where your tweets are and actually engage on the ground. And I've listed out places in previous videos where you can run for offices, what positions of local authority are important in your communities here in the United States. You can look that video up. It's called The Positions of Influence. So if you're interested in local office, I would recommend that video, because not everything is in Congress or the state legislature. A lot of it is in your local county, municipality, and small town, and you should go for it. So with that being said, like I said, we've reached 1,000 subs. The work is not going to stop. I'm going to be on more stream appearances. I'm going to be interviewing people. I'm going to be talking to writers. I'm going to be talking to journalists. I'm going to be talking about more books. I'm going to have more guests on. I'm going to make more guest appearances where I can. I do listen to videos at 2 times speed. I've got to, learn as much as I can, because a year and a half ago, I wasn't the same person politically as I was today. So positions do change. Things do change. More videos to come. I will have another scripted video out soon. And from there, I'll probably have I'll take the essay that I'm going to be submitting to Antelope Hill Publishing. I'll also read it here in case I don't win the contest, which is fine, but it'll still be a good video for you all to listen to. And then I'll be making a blog post on Minds, which is based on Nick Land's The Dark Enlightenment. It's a little corollary to his work. I'm putting it on Minds because I don't think I can post it on Substack, and I sure as heck can't read it on YouTube without getting in trouble. So I'll do my best. Congratulations, you prudent little prudential guy. Thanks, Don. I greatly appreciate it. I thank you so much. I plan on keep going and doing what I can. And like I had said, if I can just encourage a few of you all to spend some of your time to do things with your neighbors and your community and your neighborhood and your small towns, wherever you live, whether it's a small town, the suburbs, or a big city, then I've done some good. And I will continue to do the work as much as I can, and I'll keep putting stuff out there. So with that being said, it's Easter Sunday. It's a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon where I'm at. I want you all to spend the rest of your day with your families. Talk to your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters if you can. Enjoy this holiday. Go put out Easter eggs for the little kids out there to go find. Remember that Christ is risen. Things are going to get better. And no matter what happens, we all got each other. So you guys just stay strong, stay prudent, and I'll see you all next time. Happy Easter, everybody.